Hello, it's James from XRobots.co.uk. This is part 1 of building a virtual reality hoverbike simulator. So hopefully we're going to do the whole project from start to end with hardware that you can ride on and an actual finished game. And I'm mostly going to be doing the hardware side. The software part isn't going to be done by me, it's going to be done by students at Portsmouth University, but there's more coming up on that at the end. And basically we're going to hopefully publish the whole thing as well, so you can build your own, all being well. So first of all, I need to build the hardware to actually ride on. So far, I've got a Suzuki motorbike seat off eBay and some handlebars. And what we need to build is a rig, basically, that you can lean on in 2 axis, and that's actually going to be a big part of how you steer the game. Dive, 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 dive! So after an extensive discussion with Portsmouth University about health and safety, we decided it was better not to suspend people from the ceiling with counterweights and a giant steel frame, and it's probably best to hold them up from below. So what we've decided to do essentially is build a 2-axis rocking horse, and this is 1 axis that allows you to lean forwards and backwards, and then what we need now is an axis that allows you to lean sideways as well. So far this is essentially a plywood box and nothing's fixed onto it, but it seems to work alright for 1 axis. And basically we've made the proportions correct so that to stop people tipping over completely forwards, basically this radius is double the height from here, so the centre point is actually somewhere about half a metre above the seat, and that means it's very hard to tip forward and tip completely off it or backwards. In fact, it's practically impossible unless you stand right up and tip it back over its end. This is my very crude planning version, so basically this is roughly what it's going to be like. Obviously we've got the top stage already there, and we've got to build this bottom stage for it to sit on. There's going to be some sort of pegs for your feet with foot switches. Obviously there'll be handlebars and the seat on top. So this sits on top of a riser in the middle which stops it tipping over. That needs to be bolstered up. It'll also have bearings on, so this runs smoothly against it, surface to surface, and of course the whole thing sits on another radius. Now at the moment this radius is drawn to be the same as this one, but in reality it needs to be shallower because the rider is sitting a bit higher because of the distance here. So probably we'll end up with the same centre point and just making that radius have the same centre as this radius in height, and that should give us the same lean in both directions. But obviously we are putting the weight of the whole person on a very small point where these radiuses meet. So basically what we need to do is make sure that this is extremely strong, so it's probably not going to be made of a piece of wood. That's right, it's a piece of 70mm square box section steel, and I've got 2 of them, and I've got another 2. It'll end up in a configuration like this with the steel bolted together so the ends come off. Obviously we'll have some plywood across here, which is where the first stage runs on, and these support the runners that go the other way. Right, so we've got a plywood platform that goes in there, and then this piece of course runs on the middle. But we need to make sure that it doesn't tip sideways when you lean on the other rails, and also it doesn't walk up to the other end as someone gets enthusiastic. And that's going to look like a thing in the middle which is actually going to be bolted through the steel and stick up like so. It will have cross bracing, and that will actually have some bearings that run in the gaps between the inner and the outer that stop that top deck tipping sideways. So that piece is made of 18mm ply, it's extremely tough, and it fits in a hole that I've cut in that base plate. That will of course bolt to the steel, which will be butted up to it, and then our top deck will fit over the top like so. That plywood piece on its own is actually really substantial. Obviously once it's bolted to the steel it will be really strong to survive that sideways action, and obviously it needs to be strong enough for the heaviest person to ride on. In the gap we're going to have bearings above and below, so 2 on each side at least, and we might put some further out as well. We'll see how that goes, and those bearings are going to run to keep these spaced properly, and so when you lean there's something to lean on that you can run freely on. I've printed these bearing mounts and I've used the Lulzbot Moore extruder with its massive nozzle, so the parts are really tough, but also basically they're just really holding that 12mm studding. This is actually flush, so where it's mounted against the surface the studding is actually touching the wood, and that means that this isn't actually bearing the load, it's just holding it from moving in the other axis. Obviously we've got to cut a recess in here for the bearing to fit through, but this should give me the right spacing between the inner and the outer. Right, here they are installed. There's 2 on this side and 2 on the other side, and there's a hole through to let that bearing rotate. You can just about see the bearing on the back there poking through its hole. So that should stop this tipping sideways, because now it hits those bearings, but of course it can still operate like this because it rolls on the bearings. We may need some on the other sides, but I think that should be fine actually. The only thing it doesn't stop, of course, is this twisting, and it doesn't stop this sliding up and down, and we're going to solve that problem with the same mechanism. So what I'm going to do is turn the bottom here into a kind of linear gear with teeth made of tubes, and then make a cutout in the curve section so that it locks onto the teeth, and we'll have those about every 250 mil, and that should stop it twisting and also moving sideways. Right, so now if we pop that back on top, we should find that interlocks with those tubes, and we've got another 4 to do at the ends. Some of the tubes are held on with more 3D prints done in the Moore extruder, and we've got another 2 to do on each end, but before I can fix those on, I want to get some paint on this base, and we've got another secret ingredient. Right, I've painted it black with Dulux Rich Black Emulsion, which is a house paint, but it's fine for wood. I don't know who paints the house in that, but there we go. Right, I've now got some strips of doormat. So this is would have been a big square you put in the doorway. It's sort of got fibres on one side and rubber on the other side, and that's going to go along underneath the rails on this axis. Now I know the room this is going to live in has got carpet tiles, so I wanted to give a similar experience on both axes, and also it'll just help it run better where those holes are, where they go over the tubes. I'm not sure which way up to stick this. I was going to stick it furry side up, but I think I might stick it rubber side up, and then the glue's got something to bite into to stick it down onto that surface. I've stuck my doormat down, I've stuck it hairy side down, and also it's held down with these tubes, and I've made 3D printed brackets that hold them all the way. So there should be no reason that should come up, and if it does come up, we can always stick it back down again with some normal glue. So all the bearings are reattached, and I think it's not looking too bad. Right, that seems to run pretty well. I've kind of adjusted the slots with a file to make sure all of those teeth go in, and that seems to work pretty well. Yep, that seems to be just the right motion, but before I decide where to put the seat and where to put the handlebars, I also need some stirrups somewhere down there. I think I'm going to need to put the side-to-side axis on so we can just check I'm at the right height. Right, here are my end pieces for the other axis. So we've got steel again bolted through the plywood. There's also a batten there, so it's not just 2 bolts supporting it. And this radius here is slightly shallower than the other radius because of course we're slightly higher up. So the top deck fits underneath this piece here, which keeps the centre of gravity really low, and of course as long as everything's inside this envelope it never touches the floor. If we need to get a higher centre of gravity to make the lean side to side better or easier, then of course we can just put this on top of here and that'll work out just as well. So that seems about right. I can kind of lean and hold my position. Obviously I'm on carpet with soft underlay here. On carpet tiles on concrete it'll be a bit faster, a bit more like the front to back axis, but on the whole that seems alright. I can lean in all directions, and that seems to run pretty smoothly. I've added 2 more pairs of bearings each side, so I did actually manage to twist the thing in a weird way whilst I was leaning backwards and forwards and sideways at the same time, so hopefully that should stop it twisting completely now. I put my handlebars on, there's some stainless tube here, some U-bolts holding it on the inside, and I've got a kind of bike thing here to mount the T-bar. I've also got brake levers you'll see there, but there's more buttons and things to go on in the future. I've also put 2 struts on to hold the seat in place. Right, it seems pretty good. I can throw that around and nothing bad happens. So pretty happy with the basic structure so far. That's the end of part 1, but check back next week to see part 2, where I'll be finishing it off and adding the electronics integration, both switches and foot pedals, and also the Vive Tracker for virtual reality integration. We've also got a couple of special feedback features. There'll also be more about taking it down to Portsmouth University and showing it to the students, and they're going to do the software in future parts. So don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this project and all the other projects. And also it's really important that all my projects are funded through Patreon. So have a look at patreon.com/XRobots and you can get access to some exclusive rewards, including a live stream with me and all my videos early. Alright, that's all for now.